Chatty, fun, casual, and extremely awesome. That's exactly how this conversation transpired to be on this Thoughtful Thursdays episode of Karishma Connect as I spoke to Garima Kaushal, co founder of Sploot, which is a unique initiative in India that seeks to offer dog parents all the information that they need, including healthcare, home care, and all the services as at a one-stop solution at the convenience of their phones. And she tells me more about how she started it, what went into building it, what motivated her to start this brilliant initiative apart from her own four-legged sweetheart, and how she breathes onto this culture of entrepreneurship within her company itself. What can people learn from it? What are the services you could leverage if you wish to engage with Sploot, and a whole lot more. So go check out the episode, and until the next one, stay tuned. This is Karishma. I'll be back next Sunday with another fresh episode. Until then, Tata. Thank you so much, Garima, for joining me on Karishma Connect. It's a pleasure to have you. I see a very unique story there, and I look forward to unraveling it on this podcast today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Most welcome. Now, the first question I ask everybody is very straightforward. It is, tell me about your journey. Tell me about how you started. Where was your idea seeded? What's been your journey even before your idea? And what makes it so special to be where you are today?
Yeah. So I think for me, honestly, this obsession or whatever love for pet care, I think probably started as a child because I was actually one of those families that didn't have a dog themselves, but all my best friends had dogs, all my cousins had dogs. So we were constantly, the cousins who had to beg their parents for a dog and be told that there are too many dogs at home. I don't need another one to take care of. So I think in some ways I've been picking up on the insight around what we're doing since then.
Okay.
We actually went through a traumatic experience as a family. I lost my younger brother, and it so happened that my dad decided, okay, let's get a dog home. It'll be a change, all of that, and that's when in the pet parenting journey really kind of began because once you get a dog home is when you really realize that okay, it's actually what everybody says it is.
Hmm.
Before then, you're a little more okay, cool, it'll be cool to have a dog.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not gonna be so much work. Then you
Yeah.
realize that okay, it's a lot of fun, and there's some real heartwarming genuine love there, but it's also a big responsibility, so it's not something that you can take very lightly.
Yes.
So I think that's how it kind of started. We got our first dog home about 12 years ago.
Hmm.
And since then we got another dog. Now me and my co-founder, who's also my partner, we live together. We've got a dog here as well. So it's just like a ever expanding kind of four-legged family that kind of gets added. Uh, so that, I mean, broadly just linked to pet care, but my own journey has actually been not so what do you call it? It's not really been a journey which has been entirely been in pet care. I started off studying eco. That's where me and my co-founder met as well. Then I decided, okay, don't want to get into the academic side of it. I actually jumped into marketing. So I went to an ad school in Bombay, Xavier's, worked for about a year or so in digital agencies, one season with the IPL. Then did my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, joined the Budweiser brand team in Bangalore for 2 years.
Okay.
A lot of work around very different aspects of marketing. Alcohol advertising in general in India is not very straightforward. So there was a
Yes.
lot more that we did on content, on community building, experiences, and how do you kind of use that as a way to bring people together and also tell them about your product. So a lot of that is what my interest area and where my brain kind of functions as well. And yeah, I mean, through that process is when we started thinking about okay, we want to do something together. Arnav and I were talking about that constantly. And pet care was one of those things that we kept coming back to just
Mm.
because of the amount of impact we're able to create, right?
Yes.
Everything else in our lives is very tech driven, right? Everything's on your phone. 10-minute, 20-minute, even if it's 40-minute delivery, it's still delivery that comes to your house. You don't really have to go anywhere to get it.
True.
But same is not the case with pet care, right? A lot of it is broken. And the first step is information.
Yeah.
So I mean, long story short, that's what we kind of started off with and how we landed on the idea.
That's what I'm coming to. I'm coming to your long story. Tell me about how you started. That was your
Yeah.
need factor, but what were the
Yeah.
challenges and opportunities that project, brought to you then?
Mm. So we started off with the first problem, which was I may have the best intention in mind, but I
Mm.
actually have no clue what to do as
Mm.
a dog parent, right? And it boils down to, like I was saying, that insight that I got from my mom when I was a child, which is that I constantly heard the dialogue "dhyan kaun rakhega," right? So it just boils down to that same thing, which is that I may have gotten a dog home impulsively, or I made the decision, but I actually don't know what to do. So if I don't know what to do, what's going to happen is my care for my dog is actually going to be very reactive. Things
Yes.
will go wrong, and then I will try and figure out what to do, etc., etc. What we wanted to kind of do is make that preemptive. Can we create a way for us to actually nudge people to do the right thing at the right time, so
Mm.
that they avoid whatever is avoidable?
Mm.
So that's where the idea really started. So we started off honestly with an Instagram page. It was literally me doing content and talking about, okay, these are the kind of problems Indian dog parents face. These are the kind of diet problems, training problems, etc., etc. Our situations are very different. Our problems are very different.
Yeah.
You're in a joint family. How do you handle that with a dog?
Yeah.
Or if there are strays outside when you're kind of going on a walk. They're very unique problems that
Yeah.
we have. How do you kind of handle that? So we started off doing information, and then along the way we kind of stumbled into this concept of community, right? Which is what we do now.
Mm.
The idea essentially came from the fact that it's not just that we need to create all of the content that helps people out, but
Mm.
there's a lot of learned knowledge that pet parents in India tend to gather because of their unique experiences. The
Mm.
idea was to make connections so that people can learn from each other as well.
Okay.
So community sprung out of that.
Mm.
And now we're picking up, okay, what are problem areas that we can also run a business out of,
Mm.
and kind of go ahead and solving those.
So
But
eventually
yeah,
growing and
yeah,
quickly learning the bricks of it, right? And looking at
yeah,
and then tell
yeah,
me,
yeah.
how does one engage with Sploot in today's times?
Mm. So we've got an app, and that's essentially where everything runs out of. Our community is on it. All of our products, services, everything's on that app as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Can you
Apart from
tell
that,
me
of course.
for the purpose of the audience, can you tell me about some of the products and services that you offer?
Yeah. So we look at solving daily care problems for
Okay.
dog parents. Right?
Mm.
The
Mm.
first problem is information.
Mm.
Second set of problems become all your chores, right? So on a daily basis, I need to walk my dog. So you
Mm.
find a solution for dog walking in terms of a subscription on the app. On a
Mm.
daily basis, I need to feed my dog.
Mm.
So similarly, there's a collection of fresh food, no preservatives, real ingredients, all of that on the app as well.
Okay.
Then on a weekly, bi-weekly kind of basis, I need to groom my dog as well, bathing, trimming, etc. That's again an option that's there on the app as well.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
that's
And
yeah.
is it limited to a specific part of India as of now, or is it available across India?
So the community is pan-India. Food is pan-India as well. Services right now we have Delhi and Bangalore.
When you say you have products in Delhi and then in Bangalore, how did you set that up?
Oh, got it. So the services piece, for example, has to be local, right? Because obviously it's a real world experience there. How we manage it is 90% is through tech. We essentially have a partner app, we have a dashboard. So there's a central team based out of Gurgaon that handles customer support, that handles hiring,
Hmm.
all of that. There's an on-ground team that looks at quality, that looks at training, that looks at any on-ground escalations that need to be handled, etc. But that's essentially how that service aspect is handled. From a food perspective, that essentially happens because it's a product, right? So it runs like a e-com D2C
Hmm.
kind of thing, where
Got it.
somebody's buying on the app or the website, and then it gets shipped from our warehouses.
Got it. Got it. And then tell me, did you ever face a block? Because it's also something not common for, like, I know of people around me, the most immediate people that I would have seen, ke, acha, theek hai, I have a pet, I am dealing with them myself. I don't need to really go and give these extra. There are very few people I know, in fact, who actually invest that kind of time and effort in pet parenting and actually, reading up on it. And if I may go ahead to say that I don't know if there's a statistic at it yet, but I've seen the younger population being more aware of these things as opposed to the older. Have you noticed something like that? Have you noticed this kind of block when approaching the community, or what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. What we're actually seeing is there is a rise of a younger, more aware population of pet parents.
Mm.
Um, because it's also that the purpose of getting a dog is now different, right? 10 years ago, if you speak to anybody in our parents' generation,
Yeah.
getting a dog home was more like, the kids are demanding it,
Yeah.
or, you need a dog at home to kind of guard the house and alert you and stuff like that. So the purpose was very different, right?
Yeah.
The point was not that they were a family member, so to speak. Now people are getting dogs because they're thinking of them as companion animals, right? And it's, I mean, the fact of the world that we live in, loneliness
Yes.
is on the rise, mental health awareness is on the rise. And I think the growth in pet care also is very, very linked to all of these aspects as well, right?
Mm.
With a higher capacity to spend, but also knowing that, I live in a nuclear setup, or
Mm.
I'm single, or we're just married but not ready for kids.
Mm.
Those use cases are basically changing. And I think that's why you see there is definitely a stark difference between, I think, new first time pet parents
Mm.
versus who probably have had pets for a long period of time and for that kind of a purpose.
Mm.
But we're also seeing very interesting segments come out, right? For example, and maybe this is also like personal experience, right?
Mm.
Empty nesters is also like a very interesting segment
Yes.
to look at,
Yeah.
because a lot of people now, after their kids have left the house, all of that, are now warming up to having dogs
Yes.
in the
All
house,
over
right?
the news, yeah.
I know someone, for example, who initially got a dog home, and grandparents were against it, parents were against it. Okay, why do we need one? All of that. So happened that her dog passed away, and now her parents are now insisting on getting another one home because it helped keep the
Yeah.
family together. It helped kind of engage everybody in a positive way, etc. So I mean, really interesting how I don't know. I'm just generally fascinated by how animals tend to change how humans
That's
behave with each other as
very true, because
well.
I've seen them become the apple of everybody's age, regardless. Tell me, from your connections with this amazing community that you have built out, are there some myths that you have managed to uncover? Have there been some typical thoughts about pet parenting or about pets that you have managed to break down or learn about that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I think so many of them. I think right down to basic stuff like when you grow up in India, you tend to assume that whatever I eat, my dog can also eat.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true. They don't do so well on masale and bread and milk and everything that we eat. That for me, for example, when I started off in this journey, was a big eye opener, right? Because till that point, we were also feeding our dogs bread and milk, and I mean, sometimes I still catch my mom doing that, and I'm like, please, hello, this is not allowed.
You're operating in
And
a very interesting market, let me tell you.
I come from one of those like big, loud Punjabi families where everything you eat, the dog deserves
Yes.
tax, right? So there's aloo ka parantha with butter, then one big generous bite will also go to the dog. So a lot of that is unlearning that just because your dog likes it doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy for them. So that 100%. Apart from that, I think also, I mean, for me specifically, also, it's been a great, great experience understanding, this whole um, coexistence piece with community or stray animals.
Mm.
When you're not familiar with them, you tend to be scared, right? That is usually the perception because you hear about only the bad stuff.
Mm.
The news cycle will not tell you all the good parts about that happening, or having dogs in your area, etc. I think that's been a great understanding for me as well, that ultimately dogs are dogs, right? Everybody has a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Dogs have their own. As long as they're well fed, as long as they have a roof over their heads, they're all very nice to you.
Yeah.
Of course, there'll be edge cases, right? And as the case with humans as well.
Yeah.
More often than not, they'll actually keep to themselves. As long as you are kind of maintaining that peace with them as well, they'll also be happy with you. So just that aspect of, learning that you're coexisting in a world
Mm.
with other species. It's
Mm.
not just your thing and, everybody else can buzz off. That's, I think, a great lesson that you start kind of, once you start observing it, then it's very hard to kind of get out of your head.
Mm.
But yeah.
And are there any tips that you would like to share with pet parents of today about taking care of their pets and making it a better world for them, basically?
Yeah. I think a couple of things. One, I think always better to ask the question,
Mm.
right? A lot of times we're either because we don't know any better or because we don't know where to ask, we tend to hesitate and just take the first piece of advice that we get. Always better to just know
Mm.
whatever you are heading into, whether it is a basic food thing or a training thing or a lifestyle thing. Just better to ask, right? You don't want to be in a position where later you think that if only I had thought of this more,
Yeah.
I may not have been in this situation. That number one. And number two, I think, I mean, it teaches you a lot, right? Being a pet parent is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's as hard as being a real life child parent. But there's a lot you learn about, becoming a mother or becoming a father through that experience, because you are basically taking care of another living being who's dependent on you for survival.
Yeah.
It, I think that journey is something that requires a lot of patience. So, oftentimes, you don't see the end of the road in that moment, but it usually pans out.
Mm.
So, I mean, just I think my advice would be to just be patient, and yeah, just focus on the bond that you have with your dog, and things usually pan out and calm down, no matter how hectic they sound and feel in that moment.
This is a very interesting question. It came to me while I was drafting responses for you, and I said, okay, let me see if I can throw a
Yeah.
little bit of a curveball and ask you this one,
Yeah.
which is, tell me, what is that one? I wouldn't ask you why do you love your dog or why do you love dogs, because I know the answer is standard, or it's more something that everybody has an emotion to share. But what I would like to ask you is that you're an entrepreneur today, you've had a journey of your own. What is that one thing about dogs that has, that you have learned from them about
Mm.
entrepreneurship, about your professional journey? What is that one lesson you have learned from your dog about that has influenced your professional journey or the way you operate as an entrepreneur?
Very interesting question. Two things that are coming to my mind. One is, it was a revelation to me. So we bring our dog to office every day, right? And it was a revelation to me a few months in, because I started catching different people on the team
Huh.
having very like private moments with her, right? Like I would walk into a room and they're cuddling her, and she's also like nuzzling them and all of that. And I was like, I did not realize like she has an independent relationship with everyone.
Huh.
And it's amazing to see that even people who didn't necessarily grow up being comfortable around dogs are now suddenly, she's like that person for them.
Huh.
So I think, I mean, from that, what I learned was that, there's you don't necessarily understand human animal connections to that degree, but it makes a big difference in terms of just making sure that the vibe in office is very different, all of that. So in a lot of ways, having her in office has taught me that there needs to be a balance between pressure
Mm.
and pushing people to achieve, and also making sure that there's enough you're doing to take care of their well-being, etc. And thankfully Sriracha helps with that.
Mm.
But that's definitely a big lesson, right? That just because I'm stressed doesn't necessarily mean that 10 other people need to be stressed
Yeah.
because I'm stressed,
Yeah.
because of that. The second thing I think, and this is just, I mean, anybody who's got a pet in their lives will just swear by this, is the way that they kind of teach you the importance of being in the now, right? Because they're not actually worried about anything in the future. You're just focused on, I need to sleep right now, so I am sleeping.
Yeah.
Or, this is what's happening right now, therefore I will focus all of my attention on this. That's a great like lesson sometimes. Like sometimes when I'm stressed and I look at her and I'm like, okay, cool, life is like carrying on. It's okay. I can pause for a bit and it'll be
Very
fine when I get back
interesting.
to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean those two things.
Both very interesting. And then tell me, what is next for you at Sploot? What's your growth? Do you have something that you're looking at in terms of expansion, in terms of carrying this wonderful project further? And also tell me, where did you get the name from? Because I'm very curious about that.
I'll tell you about the name first. Honestly, we started out with I think something very generic like pet project or something.
Huh.
When we were doing the first idea
Thank
deck.
God you didn't.
Yeah, because it's too common. But honestly, I think the brainwave came from my first dog
Okay.
because he's a golden retriever
Hmm.
and he's constantly splooting. Sploot actually is this slang word for this stretch that dogs and cats do when they're flat out on their belly.
Okay.
And they do it when they're absolutely relaxed. Like, they're comfortable in your presence if they're doing that.
Okay.
So it came from that because it was a standard pose at all times. So it was
Huh.
just like this word that we used to use in the family quite a bit.
Huh.
So it got on from there and then kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So that was that.
Huh.
In terms of how we're looking at, growing the community and what we're planning on next, community remains at the center of what we're doing. So what we're actually working on right now is very interesting. Is this massive survey that we want to do of pet parents across the country and figuring out all of the issues that they face in their residential societies, because a
Hmm.
lot of this talk around negative issues, incidents, etc., has meant that there's actually no standardized set of rules in terms of, if you do have lifts, how do you create a space where it's coexistence and it's not just that okay, now you take 10 stairs, 10 flights of stairs, or you can't have a dog at all, right?
Hmm.
So the idea essentially is that can we capture all of those responses and come out with something like a guide for how to make your residential society
Hmm.
a little more pet friendly, or how can you exist in a space without that conflict being something that you're worried about.
Hmm.
So that's something we're working on as part of the community, and I mean that's something that personally is very interesting for me. Apart from that, of course, city expansion is in the works. Bangalore is something we've recently kind of launched. Bombay hopefully will be next. And yeah, I mean, the idea essentially for us is how many of these use cases are we able to solve for dog parents? We started off with daily chores,
Hmm.
but the next step is, can we pick up everything that is a service that dog parents would want to get? For example, boarding, vets,
Hmm.
even local bakeries,
Hmm.
photography,
Hmm.
anything and everything. Can we create a place for that on the Sploot app, so that business owners can find pet parents, and then that world basically becomes all part of our community as well.
You know, as an entrepreneur operating with something that may or may not have a reference point as such when you started out, what would you advise other people who are trying to start off similarly with a field or with a segment that's not tapped into, and that too in a market that is so diverse and poses so community building in a market that is so diverse cannot be an easy task. It takes a lot to bring all those differences together. So what is your advice for young entrepreneurs who are envisioning to do the same?
I honestly feel it comes down to how much you want it to work. Not that we've kind of figured it out, but I think 4 years now that we've been doing this. And I think the one thing that we do realize is that it's extremely important to be passionate about what you're working on,
Mm.
because 9 times out of 10 things are not going to go your way. You're not going to have any money.
Very
You may
true.
not have investment. You may not even have customers for the large part of it. It's only if you are personally passionate about finding a solution or making that impact that you will actually bother to keep pushing even
Mm.
when things aren't going your way. So I mean that's honestly all it takes. It does require that level of um, hard-headedness, I guess, that I will want to kind of make make this work. Of course, I mean, needless to say that it does come with a layer of having some security blanket, right? Like if I didn't have my parents supporting me or my partner supporting me, I would not have been able to do this at all.
Yeah.
So definitely have like a fund in place, because like I said, things may not go well. So you need to have your basic needs taken care of, because otherwise, I mean, where is that energy going to come from?
Yeah.
So I think some amount of financial planning along that side also definitely helps. Yeah.
On that note, more power to you. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a
Thank
really
you.
nice, if I may put it, a very awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.